Hey, I'm Nate Savage and welcome to video 3 of the Blues Guitar Quick Start series. In this lesson, we're going to learn about dominant 7th chords, or just 7th chords. We're going to learn a few shapes for dominant 7th chords, and then we're going to learn how to apply them to the standard 12-bar blues progression. 7th chords, or dominant 7th chords, are one of the major contributing factors to the overall sound of the blues. The blues doesn't always use dominant 7th chords, but it's really common to see dominant 7th chords all throughout blues songs. Dominant 7th chords are made by adding a lowered 7th scale degree to a major chord. Don't worry too much about that right now. I just kind of want to expose you to the idea of what a dominant 7th chord actually is. The focus of this lesson is going to be just on learning some dominant 7th chord shapes and getting your ears familiar with the sound of dominant 7th chords. Now, generally, major keys only have a dominant 7th chord show up one time, and that's for the 5 chord. When we're playing in the blues, you can get away with using dominant 7th chords for all the chords in the standard 12-bar blues progression, the 1, the 4, and the 5 chord. That's kind of the magic that lies in the blues, somewhere between a major and a minor tonality. Let's move on to learning some dominant 7th chord shapes. It's important that you know at least some of these, so let's just go ahead and continue with the key of E blues that we've been working in. So if we know the 1, 4, and the 5 chord in the key of E, A, and B, it'd be great to learn 7th chords for those chords, so we're going to do that. For your E 7th chord, or E dominant 7th chord, it's really easy if you know your open E already. If you get that on there, all you have to do is take your 3rd finger off of that 4th string. And that's your E dominant 7th chord. So your 1st finger is going to end up on the 1st fret of the G string, and your 2nd finger is going to end up on the 2nd fret of the A string. And you can strum all 6 strings. And one thing that's going to be good for you right now to do is just go back and forth between an E major chord and then an E dominant 7th chord. Just listen for the difference. And make sure when you're making this chord to come right down on the very tips of your fingers and right behind the frets too, so you get a really good clean sound. The next chord shape we need to learn is an A dominant 7th chord. So let's kind of learn this the same way. Let's get our open A shape on there. Make sure to leave your little E string out for that. And kind of the same idea applies here. All we're going to do is take our middle finger off of that chord shape. And that'll give us our A dominant 7th chord shape. And really listen for the difference between that A major chord shape and the A dominant 7th. You're going to want to memorize and be able to recognize dominant 7th chords right away. The last 7th chord shape we need to learn to be able to play through our E blues progression is a B dominant 7th chord shape. And this one's a bar chord shape, so maybe a little bit tougher for you if you're not used to it. But get your bar on the 2nd fret. And then what we're going to do is basically make the same A major shape with our 2nd, 3rd, and 4th fingers. And you can just, again, same idea, take that finger off, that 3rd finger off, to play a B dominant 7th bar chord shape. Now, this fingering is a little bit weird. I usually don't make it like that. What I end up doing is just grabbing the 4th fret of the D string with my 3rd finger, and then my pinky stays on the 4th fret of the B string right there. My bar stays in place. So that's the fingering I use for that chord shape. Once you have these chords down, you can try to apply them to the standard 12-bar blues progression. Now, make sure you have them down to where you can go right to them on their own before you start trying to switch through them. Otherwise, you're going to be frustrating yourself when you try to play through the 12-bar blues progression with these chord shapes. So here's an example of what this will sound like when you're able to play through the entire 12-bar blues progression with these dominant 7th chords. Do you see how dominant 7th chords kind of make that 12-bar blues progression sound just more bluesy? Try to commit the sound of dominant 7th chords to memory so when you hear them, you can instantly recognize them. I wanted to give you some more dominant 7th chord shapes so you can kind of learn at your leisure. So kind of look at this part of the lesson as a reference for the future for when you're learning how to play blues and other keys. All right, the first one I wanted to show you was a G dominant 7th chord. And if you reference this back to your open G, all we're going to do is move this note right here on the 3rd fret of our high E string down 2 frets. And to do that, we can keep our 2nd and 3rd fingers where they are and just come play the 1st fret of the open E string with your 1st finger there. So that's your change from G major to G dominant 7th. The next dominant 7th chord I wanted to show you was a C dominant 7th. So get your open C on there. And you're going to leave your 3 fingers where they are. And all we're going to do is come down on the 3rd fret of the G string with your pinky. Make sure to leave your little E string out. And that's your C dominant 7th shape. Listen to the difference. The next chord shape we're going to learn is a D dominant 7th. So just for reference, let's get our open D chord on here. And the fingering for this one changes a bit because we have to move this note here on the 3rd fret of the B string all the way back here to the 1st fret of the B string. So what we're going to do to kind of facilitate that is put your 3rd finger on the 2nd fret of the high E, 2nd finger on the 2nd fret of the G string, and your 1st finger is going to come back here and grab that 7th, that lowered 7th on the 1st fret of the B string. Make sure to leave the E and A strings out of this chord. The last dominant 7th chord shape I wanted to share with you was for your E bar chord shape. If I'm playing an A bar chord here using the E bar chord shape, it's really easy to make that into a dominant 7th chord shape. So all you have to do is take your pinky off, and now you're playing a dominant 7th chord for whatever bar chord location you're playing. So in this case, I'll be playing an A dominant 7th using the E dominant 7th bar chord shape. Take your time with all these extra dominant 7th chord shapes I just taught you. You may not use them right away, but they're always going to be here for you when you need them. So pull up the jam track for this lesson. You can use either the 70 beats per minute one or the 100 beats per minute one and try to apply your dominant 7th chord shapes to the standard 12-bar blues progression. If you need to, keep your rhythm really simple and just concentrate on the chord changes. If you have any questions about dominant 7th chords or how to apply them to the 12-bar blues progression, leave them here in the comments and I'll get back to you. Also, you can email me, nate@guitarsystem.com. In the next lesson, we're going to approach blues rhythm guitar in a little bit different angle. Instead of using just power chords or 7th chords to play through the standard 12-bar blues progression, we're going to learn a blues riff to play through the blues progression. See you in the next lesson.